there's a lady named Angela Duckworth. She was a professor at Stanford, and she did this pretty massive research project on people who succeed. And she looked at sort of multiple areas of life. She looked at people who succeeded in the military academies, people who succeeded in challenging schools, Ivy League type schools, people who succeeded in business, and even people who were successful at the spelling bee, right? And trying to figure out what set them apart. And when she went into the project, she expected to discover that it was intelligence, right? That their IQ would be higher. They would have something unique and special about the way that their mind worked, the way that they thought, the way that they could retain information. And so she did, that was sort of what she went in. But what she discovered that really did shock her was that people who were successful at all of those areas, that their IQ, their intelligence wasn't significantly or even any higher than the average person. What she discovered was what she called AQ, adversity quotient, right? The ability to overcome. In fact, she looked at it and said that when she looked at all those, everyone had story after story after story after story of something difficult, something challenging, that moment when they felt like quitting, and they pushed through that. They pushed through the adversity, through the challenges of life, and she coined this term out of that, called it grit. And the way that she defines grit is the passion and perseverance for long-term goals. It's the ability to keep going no matter what. And man, if you've ever read her book, it's actually a great book. It's worth the time to read. And you read it and you're really motivated, right? Because it's like, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to push through challenges, push through difficulty. But the truth is, like for most, if not all of us, we have felt like at one point in our life quitting, haven't we? Or throwing in the towel, or giving up. In fact, as a pastor, here's how it sounds to me. Here's what I hear. People, they'll come into my office and they'll say something like, Stephen, my marriage it's falling apart. It's too far gone. There's nothing I can do to save it, so I'm just going to quit. Maybe not their exact words. That's what it boils down to. Or maybe it sounds like, hey, you know what? I know that one time God gave me this dream, this ministry, this thing that I was supposed to do, and maybe I didn't do it at the time or right away, or I was busy, and now that time has passed, and I'm not sure I'll ever be able to do or fulfill or see that dream come to fruition that I felt like God gave me. For some, it's like, Stephen, there's this person in my life, and I love them, and I care for them, and I really want to see them change, but they keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, and hurting me and hurting other people, and I'm just about to give up on them. Or maybe it sounds like, Stephen, I've got an addiction, and I've been struggling with this addiction for longer than I can remember, and I stopped for a little while, right? I stopped doing it for a little while, and I do the things I need to not do what I don't want to do, and then I fall right back into it. I'm just about to give up and just do what I've always done before. Or maybe it sounds like, there's someone in my family I love, and I want to see them give their life to Jesus, and I share with them about Jesus, but the more I share, the further they push me away, and I don't know, I'm just about to give up. You ever felt like that? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's one of those areas. Maybe it's some other area of your life where you just feel like, it's hard. It's not working out. It's not going the way that I thought it was going to go. So I'm going to quit. Now maybe when we know that, right? We know that we should keep going. We know that we should do what's right, but we don't know how, right? It's just almost easier to stop than to keep feeling like we're beating our head against the wall. Well, what Angela Duckworth discovered, and I used discovered, right? What she found out was what God has been telling us literally for thousands of years, and that is that when we face challenges, when we face difficulties, when we're going through and things aren't going through life and things aren't working out the way that we want them to, maybe the answer is just to keep walking. To just keep walking. And let me explain this, because I think I want to look at a story today. It's found in Joshua chapter 6. And it's a story that if you grew up in church, you're familiar with, but it's a story that teaches this principle of the power of just walking, of just taking one more step, of keep on going, even when we don't feel like it, even when we're not sure. And it takes place sometime after the nation of Israel has entered into the promised land. They for 40 years they wandered around in the desert, right? Because they got to the promised land the first time, and God said, go in. And they said, we can't go in. Why? Because there's giants. And God says, I can take care of giants. And they go, no, let's go back to be slaves in Egypt rather than trust you, God. And so God says, look, if you can't trust me, you get to walk for 40 years until an entire generation dies. An entire generation had to pass away, and that generation is gone, and the next generation is there, and they're going into the promised land, and they're taking possession of this land that God has given to them, and things are going well, and until they come to one city. And let's read about it in Joshua 6, verse 1. It says, now Jericho was strongly fortified because of the Israelites, no one leaving or entering. The Lord said to Joshua, look, I have handed Jericho, its kings and its best soldiers over to you. So what happens is they come to a city that was different than the other cities because it was fortified. It had walls and gates and soldiers, and they had heard about the nation of Israel coming, so they gathered all their stuff, right? All their supplies, all their people, all their animals, and they come in and they basically lock up the city so they can stay there. They can wait them out, right? They don't have to do anything. They're out in the desert. The nation of Israel have like supply chains and things coming to them, right? All they have is just what they can carry with them. And so the Jerichoans, and I don't know if that's what you call them, but that's what we're going to call them because I'm up here and I get to say it. So the Jerichoans are just going to say, we'll wait for you. We'll stand here inside our safe city. We'll stand in here where things are good, and no one's going to come in and no one's going to go out. And then God says to Joshua, he goes, look, I have, not I'm going to, not I will one day, but I already have handed Jericho and its kings and its best soldiers over to you. Now, if we could go back in time, and we didn't know the story, right? Because some of you know the story, but let's say you did know the story, and you were standing next to Joshua, you might tap Joshua on the shoulder and go, I think he's confused. Right? This doesn't make sense. Like, I know we have an army and I know we have some soldiers, but there's no way that we can defeat them. And in fact, not only that, but he's acting like we already had defeated them. And the truth is the walls are still standing and the soldiers are still inside. And guess what, Joshua? We're on the outside. And we don't have any way of getting in. There's really nothing we can do. They can just wait, and then we'll have to eventually leave. Maybe we should go try a different city. Maybe we should go to maybe we should go someplace that's easier. Like, you can see them, and no one said that. I don't know, or maybe they did. It was just not recorded. But you can see that feeling there. And then God says, all right, Joshua, not only have I handed to you, but let me tell you my plan. So in verse 3, he tells Joshua, he says, march around the city with all the men of war, circling the city one time. Do this for 6 days, and have 7 priests carry 7 ram's horn trumpets, say that fast 10 times, in front of the ark. But on the 7th day, march around the city 7 times while the priests blow the ram's horns. When there is a prolonged blast of the horn, and you hear its sound, have all the troops give a mighty shout. Then the city wall will collapse, and the troops will advance, each man straight ahead. Now, can we just say this is a bad plan? Can we say it, right? Like put yourself there, okay? Imagine that you're there and you're standing next to Joshua, and God says, hey, I've already handed you the city. And you're looking around going, I don't see the city. They're on the inside, we're on the outside. And then God says, here's my plan. Because in no way do you see does walking plus music plus shouting equal a wall falling down. Right? And nowhere, we could go do this today. If you want to try to, let's give it a shot, right? Well, I'll meet you after church. We'll pick there's that old warehouse down, like that old barn thing downtown. We can go walk around it if the neighbor doesn't shoot us. And we'll walk around it once a day. And then we'll sing some songs and do some of that kind of stuff. And then we'll do it again tomorrow. And then we'll do it again the next day. And we'll do it again the next day. And then on next Saturday, we'll all meet together and we'll walk around it 7 times. And we'll blow horns and we'll shout. And people are going to look at us like we've lost our minds. Because that plan is just never going to work. You've never seen it work. You've never heard of anyone else seeing that work, right? There's no way that this makes any sense in any way, shape, or form. It sounds like telling a teenager to go fight a giant with a slingshot. Or like God telling a guy to build a boat in the middle of the desert for 120 years. It sounds like God telling this guy who's a shepherd, who never even knew him, I'm going to make you the father of a great nation. It's going to outnumber the stars. So pick up your stuff and start walking that way to some land I'm going to tell you about when you arrive there. You see, one of the things that we know about our God is He asks us to do things that seem ridiculous until they work. He asks us to do things that don't make any sense until they work, because one of the things that God wants us to know is how much we need Him and how great He is. You see, if every problem we have we can solve on our own, we don't need God. Let me say that again. If every problem we have, if every challenge, if every obstacle, if every goal and dream that we have we can solve on our own, then we don't even need God, and we're not really trying to do anything significant or important, because it's all about our limits rather than saying, God, I'm going to trust in you and what you say, because your limits are far greater than mine. So God says to Joshua, I want you to walk around the city. And then the story to me gets even more interesting, because the verse 6, he says this, so Joshua, son of Nun, that's a great dad name right there, summoned the priest and said to them, take up the ark of the covenant and have 7 priests carry 7 ram's horns in front of the ark of the Lord. And he said to the troops, move forward, march around the city, and have the armed men go ahead of the ark of the Lord. So what does Joshua do? And I want you to notice something he did and something he didn't do. The first thing is that Joshua told everyone, hey, get your stuff, put on your armor, gather your horns, gather the ark. Do all the things that you need to do. We're going for a walk. We're going to walk around this city. I want you to also notice what he didn't tell the people. He didn't say how long or how many times or how often or what they were going to expect or what the end result is. He didn't even tell them what God told him. He just says, guys, gather all your stuff up and let's start walking. And so suddenly everyone starts walking. Now, I think one of the struggles that I have, and I think probably many of us have, is that we don't have a problem following God as long as we know how it's going to work out. And I think one of the challenges of even reading the Bible for us is that the Bible is so compact, right? So most of the stories that we read take place on a page or two, or maybe it's a long story. It's like 3 or 4 pages in the Bible, which really isn't that long. And it gives us the idea that all this stuff happened quickly, but put yourself there and imagine yourself in that moment where your leader says, all right, get your armor on, and we're going to go for a walk, and get your horns, because we got to walk around this city, and we got to play some music, and then one day maybe we'll shout, but don't say anything till I tell you to. And you might be going, Joshua, why are we doing this? This doesn't make any sense to me. Like there are easier ways. Like one day we're going to have to fight, and one day we may need our energy. And I don't want to put my armor on and take it off and have to do it again the next day. And you can see them just going, why are we doing this? And Joshua didn't give them the answer. He just basically says, trust me. Let's start walking. Take the first step. For us, it might mean going to our spouse and saying, I'm sorry, I messed up. We can fix this. For some, it may be sharing that dream or that ministry or that idea that God gave you all those years ago and saying, can you help me? For some, it may be saying to that person that you love, I'm not giving up on you. Even if you give up on me, and even if you give up on yourself, I'm not giving up on you. For some, it may mean going to the meeting one more time and saying, I'm going to fight this addiction. For some, it may be sharing your faith with that person that you love one more time. You will never get to your destination if you stop walking. And then God leads the nation of Israel to just get up and walk. Before they do, though, Joshua gives them one more command, which actually makes me laugh a little bit, because he says in verse 10, but Joshua had commanded the troops, do not shout or let your voice be heard. Don't let one word come out of your mouth until the time I say shout. Then you are to shout. So I wonder, for years I've wondered, why did Joshua tell the people not to talk? Right, when they're walking, because God didn't say, God didn't say they should talk. Joshua was disobeying God, but he looks at the people before and he says, hey guys, just when we're doing this, just be quiet. Don't say a word. And I've wondered why. And then I started looking back and thinking through how the nation of Israel responded. And if anything, they knew how to do well. They knew how to complain well, didn't they? Like, I mean, you know, if you know some of the stories, you know, while they were in the desert, they were like, what are we going to eat? How are we going to feed all those people? And God, like, put food on the ground for them. Like, I mean, it just, so you woke up in the morning, you go out your tent, you gather up your food, and it's like right there. That's not a bad day. I mean, if you go to H-E-B today, you would wish your food could show up on your ground right in front of you. And so it's like everything was provided. And what did they say? God, can we have something different? God, why, this is not, I don't like this. Can we had better food back in Egypt? And then you know that if you know the stories, you know that every time they won a battle or every time God did something miraculous, they would be really excited for God for a little while. And they would go, you know, God, it wasn't so bad back when we were slaves and being beaten and taken advantage of. Maybe we should go back there because at least it was easier. No, it wasn't easier. At least they knew what to expect. And again, it's a control for us. It's I know that I can be in control. And what God is showing us through Joshua is that sometimes we just need to stop complaining, stop finding excuses, stop looking at all the reasons why we can't and why it won't work, and keep going. Trust Him in every single step that we take. And so for 6 days, every day they would get up, put on their armor, gather their stuff, walk around the city, not say a word, come back home, take their armor off, put their stuff away, deal with their stuff, cook their dinner, and go to bed and get up the next day and do the same thing again. And on the seventh day, they get up, and I don't even know if Joshua told them they were going to march around 7 times, but on the 7th day, they get around the first time, and Joshua says, keep on going, and they walk around it for 7 times. It'd probably take about 10 to 12 hours for them to do that on that last day. And they're just walking, and music, and then when God gives them the signal, they shout. And look in verse 20 at what happens. It says that, so the troops shouted, and the ram's horn sounded. And when they heard the blast of the ram's horns, the troops gave a great shout, and the walls collapsed. The troops advanced into the city, each man straight ahead, and they captured the city. They did what God said, and God did exactly what He said He would do. I wonder what would have happened if they'd stopped on the 5th day. God, this isn't working. I'm hot and I'm tired. This is dumb. Like a teenager on a road trip, right? How much longer? I mean, I wonder what would have happened if they had quit there and could come up with all the excuses. I wonder what would have happened if they had stopped on the 3rd time around on the 7th day. God, they're up on the wall laughing at us. Like, don't you know that the people from Jericho were up there going, what are these crazy people doing? They come and march around the city one time and then they go home. They come back and do it again the next day. Now they're just like, I guess they're going to do it more times. And everyone's looking at us and everyone's thinking we've lost our mind. And God, this isn't working out. And what if they had quit? One moment, one day before they made that final trip around and yelled. And the walls collapse and the people walk in. You see, because they kept following God, the issue wasn't their walking. The power wasn't in their singing and their shouting and the horns playing. The power was in their faithfulness to God. And God saying, if you will continue to walk, I'll bring the walls down. I'll do what I promised to do for you. And so when you face challenges in your life, and you're going to face them, if you're not facing them now, you faced one yesterday, and if you didn't face one yesterday, you'll face one tomorrow, right? When we face the challenges in our life, my prayer for you is that you find the grit to keep on going. That we stop making excuses, we stop complaining, we stop looking at all the reasons why God's way will not work, and we make a decision that we are just going to keep on going. And here's how we do this, right? First of all, we look to God and not at the problem. The walls around Jericho were real, and they were big, and the gates were stronger than they could break through, and there was no way that they could ever overcome the obstacle in front of them. And the truth is that some of you are facing real problems in your life. Real challenges, real difficulties, and they're not a joke, and they're not something we can just say, hey, it's no big deal, get over it. I mean, some of you in your marriages, some of you the dreams that you've had, some of you the person that you care for, some of you the addiction that you're struggling with, some of you the loved one that you want to see come to Jesus, and they're real, and it seems like the more you try and the more you do, the more things seem to get messed up and worse, and the problems are consuming you, and it feels like there is no way out. And it's easy to focus on the problem. It's easy to look at everything that's wrong. But what Joshua teaches us is that if we look to God and not the problem, there is nothing that is too big for our God. I love the way John says it in 1 John. He says, you are from God, little children, and you have conquered them, because the one who is in you is greater than the one who is in the world. Do you realize that there is not a problem you face that God goes, man, that's tough. That's too hard for me. I don't know what I'm going to do. Let me get a council of angels together and let's see if we can figure this thing out. Or let's go get a bunch of smart people from the world and, I can pull all the ones who passed on and now we're in heaven. Let's get all the smart guys together and let's see if we can figure out your problem. It's almost silly for how much I think my problems are so big and overwhelming and like there's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And God's going, if you just keep walking, I'll get you there. If you just keep going, I'll get you there. Why? Because I live inside you. We have something that Joshua didn't even have, because Joshua was separated from God. If we're a child of God, then He lives within us. And so what that means is that the one who lives in me is the same God who brought down those walls. The one who lives in you is the same God who took that little stone as David threw it with his slingshot and made it nail Goliath right in the head. The same God that lives inside of you to protect Noah and his family when the whole earth was flooded as He told Noah to build that ark. The same God that's in you, the God that's in you is the same God who told Abraham, hey, I've chosen you to be the father of a great nation. Now just start walking, I'll take you to the promised land. That God lives inside of you. So what is the challenge we're facing that's bigger than us? There is none. And sometimes it's just a matter of us making the choice to just take one more step with Him. See, we look to God, not at the problem, but there's a second thing that because of that, because we can do that, we trust the way of the Lord. What God asked Joshua to do did not make sense. And there are many reasons it won't work. And there's only one reason that it will. And that's God. That's God showing up. That's God being faithful. That's God doing what He said He's always going to do. And there are things that God tells us to do, asks us to do, leads us to do, that to us just don't make sense. There's no way they're going to work. In fact, we can come up with all kinds of reasons not to. God, I've gone 1,000 times to my spouse and tried to talk to him, and they keep turning their back on me every time. Why would I go one more time? God, too much time has passed for that dream, for that ministry, for that calling that you have on my life. I've missed it. I've missed the opportunity. Why should I try one more time? God, I keep telling that person that I'm here for them and I love them and I want to help them, and they keep pushing me away and keep rejecting me. Why should I go back again? God, the addiction just won't go away. And no matter how much I try, I keep falling right back into it. God, I've told them about Jesus more times than I can remember, and they just don't seem to budge. Why should I do it again? And the answer is, are you ready? Because we just need to keep one step going. One foot in front of the other. One more time. And it's about faithfulness to God. not about me controlling the results. That's why the psalmist tells us this. He says, some take pride in chariots and others in horses, but we take pride in the name of the Lord our God. They collapse and fall, but we rise and stand firm. The psalmist is telling us you have a choice to make. You can trust in this stuff and the power of this world, or you can trust in the name of the Lord. You can trust that He'll get you through it. You can trust that He'll remain faithful. You can trust that He will not give up on you, even if you give up on Him. And that's why when we need to find the grit to keep going, we look to God, not at the problem. We trust the way of the Lord, and we remember the reward. Even if it doesn't work out the way that we want it to. Even if it doesn't turn out the way that we hope or dream, we know that God loves us and always wants the best for us. That's why the writer of Hebrews says this to us. So don't throw away your confidence. Look at that. Think about what he's saying. Don't throw away your confidence. It's like you got confidence and you throw it away, which has a great reward. For you need endurance, so that after you have done whose will? Your will? Your family's will? The world's will? No, not after you have done God's will. You may receive what is promised. Endurance, perseverance, grit, the ability to keep going. You will never arrive and never see the miracle and never see God work if you quit before the race is over. In 1951, Florence Chadwick was the first woman to swim the 20 miles across the English Channel. Right, that's a long time swimming, and it's cold, and she did it, and the first woman to do it. And in 1952, she said, you know what, I want to try something more challenging, because why not, right? I mean, you know, you've done something no one else has. So she decides to try the swim from from the coast of California to Catalina Island. It's 26 miles. It's considered by many to be one of the most difficult and dangerous swims. There's fog, there's significant waves, the water is cold, and there are sharks. Okay, and sharks just trump everything to me, right? I see a shark, I'm out of the water. I don't need to go in the water for the rest of my life, okay? I don't like sharks. Sharks are cool, they're awesome animals. I don't want to swim with them. And so when you swim, you have to have the boat that you swim next to that sort of guides you, and you have to have 2 to 4 other boats that just circle around you looking for sharks. Okay, and so this is what this woman does in 1952, and she swims for 15 hours. Straight, like no breaks, no getting in the boat, taking a little breather. 15, like most of you, the only thing you've done for 15 hours straight is sleep in your life, right? And she swims for 15 hours, and the fog sets in about halfway through, and she becomes over time disoriented and confused and exhausted, and she gets discouraged, and she says to the boat next to her, I need to come in. And the people on the boat say, no, you can do this, keep swimming. And she says, no, I can't. She literally just stops, and they pull her into the boat, put a blanket over her, and they tell her to look up, because a half a mile away is the shore of Catalina Island. And she said in that moment that she felt like, you can imagine the weight, right? You've swam 25 and a half miles, and you're half a mile or less from the shore, and you can imagine the feelings that she said, you know what, I made a decision in that moment to never quit again. And a year later, you know what she did? She made the swim. And you know what she did the year after that? She made the swim again. You know what she did the year after that? She made the swim, and she did this several times because she said she wanted to make sure that she would never quit again. And I wonder how many of us are just a half a mile from the marriage that you've always wanted. Half a mile from the dream that God gave you all those years ago coming into reality. Half a mile from seeing that person change. Half a mile from freedom from the addiction. Half a mile from seeing that loved one give their life to Jesus. Don't quit. Don't stop. Don't give up. Just take one more step. I'm telling you, some are going to think you're crazy. Some are going to think you've lost your mind. Some are going to go, you're going to think, this isn't going to work. Why am I doing this? But if we will be faithful and take one more step, there's a promise that Paul gives us in Galatians. He says, let us not get tired of doing good, for we will reap at the proper time. We'll receive, we'll harvest, we'll get at the proper time. What? If we don't give up. What is God telling you to do that you're about to give up on? What's the challenge you're facing that you go, I don't know if I can do it? What's the difficulty, the decision, the whatever it is that you're facing in this moment that you just think, you know what, I've had enough, I can't keep going. If our Heavenly Father could come and sit down with us, He'd say, just take another step. Just one more step. And if you do, He says that if we don't give up, that at the proper time, at the right time, there is a reward for all who are faithful. God calls us to what I believe is an extraordinary perseverance. Not because of who we are, not because of our greatness and our grit, but because of who He is. And with God, you can keep going. So take another step.